Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Okay, today we are getting rid of some fear, some uncertainty, and some doubt when it comes to Palantir. We are talking about one of the biggest arguments that people like to bring up against Palantir, which is that they are diluting shareholders to an oblivion, is what Andrew Ross Sorkin quoted against Alex Karp in an interview that I did a reaction to a while ago, which is the concept of share dilution, right? We're going to talk about this argument. First, I'm going to go over what share dilution is. Second, I'm going to talk about why it might be a perceptually bad thing for investors or retail investors of a company. And then third, we're going to destroy this argument because it's a horrible argument. And it's not a horrible argument, it's just not the best argument. And because I'm a champion competitive debater that I mentioned in a couple of videos before, I was top 10 in the United States in 2016, I have a little bit of analysis that I can use to break down this argument because this argument just isn't that good. So first of all, what does share dilution mean? Share dilution is a very simple concept to understand. If there are a certain number of shares in a company and the company decides to issue more shares for whatever reason, most of the time it's to raise more money. So if you're a company that has a million shares and you're going public, you might issue another million shares at $10 per share and raise $10 million because a million times 10, a million people buy each of those shares at $10 a share, you get $10 million into the company. That would dilute the existing shareholders of the company because now they own less of the company because there's another million shares. So if you owned a certain percentage, it has to go down mathematically because you own less of the overall pie that the company has since they raised more money by issuing more shares, sold those shares, in this case to the public markets, and then brought those shares as part of the overall pie of the company. So share dilution is when you add more shares to the existing pie, in this case the pie is the company, and the equity stakes of any investor, private or public, that has some amount of shares, the percentage of that has to go down because there's simply more shares in the company in and of itself. Palantir over the past year diluted shareholders by about 12%. And it makes sense because 2020 to 2021, this was their first year of kind of being a public company. So they were doing a lot of things with share dilution, which we're going to talk about in a second. And a lot of articles and a lot of people say this is a bad thing. Primarily, they specifically say it's a bad thing because retail investors don't really have control over this. And this goes into the Class F shares that I'm going to do another video about and debunking that sort of main argument about Palantir. But essentially, they say that, because shareholders, retail investors, people like you and I can't really do anything about the share dilution problem that's going on, that we should stay away from this company until they're done diluting shares. Also, to add to this argument, there are about 1.8 or 1.9 billion shares outstanding. That means the total moat of the company, which is the number of shares that exist in it in general, are about 1.8, 1.9 billion, which is reasonably a lot of shares, right? Most companies don't have that many shares unless they're like at a super, super high valuation, high level. You're talking about Palantir, a $40 billion company, 1.8 billion shares, which means in order for it to triple, right, assuming they even dilute you more, that means it's going to be harder and harder for the stock price to go up, which is the bearish argument, because there's so many shares, right? So there would have to be so much volume, so much momentum associated with the stock in order for it to go up. It's not like a small cap stock that has a short number of shares, small market cap, and if you just keep buying more and more shares, and there's more volume brought in, then the share price is going to just skyrocket and go parabolic immediately because it doesn't have a big moat, right? There's not 1.8 billion shares that need to be played around with. You might only have 20 million shares. So it's much more easier to get the stock price to go up a couple dollars instantly versus something like a Palantir where hundreds of millions of shares would have to be traded in order for us to see like a 10, 20, 30% gain within a couple of days or a couple of weeks. It makes sense. It's an argument, right? It definitely makes sense. It's an argument. The problem is this argument is missing context. This argument is missing quality. And this argument is only going down the route of numbers without understanding what is the long-term plan for Palantir. So a couple of responses to this argument. Number one, some of the best companies in the world did a lot of share dilution in the beginning and early years for one specific main reason. And this one main reason was stock-based compensation. Stock-based compensation is the process where when a company issues more and more shares via stocks, usually like restricted stock options, to new employees. Now you may be asking, well, that's normal. A lot of companies, issue new shares. Why does Palantir have to do it this aggressively? The reason they have to do it this aggressively is because they are recruiting the world's best talent at Palantir. And this is where sort of the larger analysis goes in. It's very important to understand if you're a shareholder of the company. If you are rooting for Palantir to ultimately be successful, you are likely rooting for them to have the best talent in the world that is able to execute against the complex software problems that they will have in building out their software, their defense software, their Apollo software, their Foundry software. that stuff is hard stuff to do. And even though they've been working on it for 17 years as a technology company in the world of software, if you are not constantly innovating on your software and constantly trying to make your software better and shipping out new features and shipping out new updates and ultimately making the AI and machine learning intense stuff that they do better and better and better, then you're going to get eaten up by the competition. So you need the cream of the top best talent that you can possibly get in order for that talent to actually maximize the potential of the product that you're working on. This requires a level of psychology in terms of motivating these people, because these people are not going to make as much money, from just a regular salary. And these people also can go to any other company that they want to. If you're looking at, one of the best engineers for artificial intelligence, they can go to YouTube and probably make $600,000-700,000 just off salary, not even off stock options, just by optimizing YouTube and making YouTube give better recommendations. Like they can go to Facebook, they can go to Instagram. I mean, they can go to Tesla, right? They can go to so many different companies that can afford to pay them more money because they're just naturally 10, 20, 30 times bigger than Palantir. So what does Palantir have left to offer them? The only thing they have left meaningful to offer them is an equity stake that is a meaningful equity stake, meaning it's not just like 10,000 shares. It's like maybe 100,000 shares. And when you do 100,000 shares, you have to issue more shares in the company. You have to dilute the existing base of shares that exist in order to even give them the chance to be able to have that many shares. But that's what they're competing against. They're competing against all these other companies that could give them a high enough salary that could ultimately be worth a lot more money than those shares in the first place. So that's the first reason. Like when you're recruiting top of the top talent, you need to be able to make them feel as if they're part of the mission. And the best way to make people feel as they're part of the mission, I know this because I'm running a startup, is to actually give them a meaningful equity stake. Because when you have a meaningful equity stake, you actually care about the direction of the company because you own part of the company. Even if you don't own as much as the CEO, you own an amount that's significant enough for you to realize, oh, if this stock price goes from 18 to 100, in 10 years, I could retire time, for 10 lifetimes. That's the type of generational wealth ultimately that is created when you're working at these types of companies and when you're an early employee or when you're an employee that has really meaningful stock-based compensation. The second reason this is really important to understand is that in order to retain employees for the long term, you have to give them an incentive to stay for the long term. And in a world in which people are resigning, in a world in which people are starting their own businesses, they're freelancing, they have all these opportunities, especially if you're technically talented, you could do like 6-7 projects on the side and never have to work a day in your life because technical skills are very in demand in today's economy. You would have to stay for 3 to 5 years at a company like Palantir in order for your stock options to vest. What does vesting mean? Vesting means that you, in order to get the full value of the percentages of shares that have been allocated to you in order to purchase those shares via your options and sell them at the higher price of the time, you would purchase them at a much lower price. That's the nature of like getting rich off this stuff. So if you have, 10,000 shares at $18 that you're issued in 2021, you would have to stay till 2027 to buy those 10,000 shares at $18, which would be $180,000. But the stock price at 2027 might be like $300. So 300 minus the 180,000 you paid would be a lot of money in terms of the profits that are left over. But you would have to stay for 5-6 years in order for those options to vest. Vesting meaning to fully complete. And I know this because I have a startup right now, right? I have a startup. I don't own any of my startup yet because I have to wait 4 or 5 years in order for my equity stake of my startup to actually meaningfully vest for myself. So if I left my startup right now, I would leave with nothing because I don't own any part of it yet. So it's really important to understand that this means that there is less employee turnover because there's more stock-based compensation. Why is this good for retail investors? This is the important thing to understand. Number one, when a company is constantly recruiting employees, they're wasting time. At the end of the day, it's a big waste of time. Like they have to go to all these events, they have to sell people on the vision, they have to go through interviews, they have to do technical skills with them, coding skills. Like you got to do all this stuff just to prove that someone's worthwhile for the company versus get someone, believe in them, care about them, give them stock-based compensation, and then they're there for the next 5-6 years and you don't have to worry about it. And the companies that are able to do that are not only able to retain the best talent, but they're able to create a culture in the company that actually does feel, as cheesy as it sounds, like a family. And you work better with your family because you all have this shared common goal and mission, which is to continuously grow the family into becoming a dominant family one day. And in order for that family to become dominant, the major players of that family cannot leave. That's why it's not good for CEOs to just resign. That's why usually if you're a CEO, you have a lot of power because the board of directors, the investors of the company, they want you, the person who got from 0 to 1, to bring it from 1 to 2, right? They trust in your vision and your ability to ultimately execute against these things and do the things that you want to do. and your vision for the company. So keeping talent is also incredibly important. It is time consuming to try to go get more talent, and it is less time consuming and more optimized and more effective if you can focus on all the other elements of the business if you don't have to worry about constantly recruiting talent. The only way to get them to stay is to make them feel like they have a meaningful portion of the equity pool, and the only way for them to get a meaningful portion of the equity pool is for them to be committed for the next 5 to 6 years to actually stay for their shares to have any value. It is a brilliant strategy, in my opinion, to do stock-based compensation. And by the way, some of our favorite companies have done this. Tesla did a lot of stock-based compensation from 2014 to 2019 to get people to stay. It's reported that employees and new employees are given about $20,000 to $40,000 of restricted stock options that vest over 3 years. Every new employee that joins, even in the course of 2021. So you got 20 to 40 grand of stock options that are just coming into you as an employee over 3-4 years. You're probably going to stay 3-4 years if you feel the stock price is going to go up. And if you believe in Tesla, believe in the vision of Tesla, and you believe it's going to go up, that 20 to 40,000 is going to be worth a lot more at the end of those 3 years. It's just an incentive, and human nature operates off of incentives. So it's important to understand that. In the context of an investor, I think that this is better because if Palantir is spending less time on recruiting, right, and more time on just like building product and sales and marketing, because they have the culture and the actual technical talent to execute really hard things for their clients, then I'm okay with it, right? Do I want there to be 20% dilution every year? No, because I think that's unreasonable and I don't think they have to do that. But if we're diluted 2 to 5% over the next couple of years in order to get the best talent, and we're growing in the commercial sector, and we're getting more clients, and the average revenue per client is increasing, and the products are becoming more sticky, and there's more offerings associated with the product that are coming out. If none of the fundamentals are changing, if none of the vision is changing, and the company is growing, then I don't see share dilution as the biggest problem in the world. I also think share dilution will eventually stop once the company starts to find its own groove. But in the beginning, when you're trying to get more employees, when you're trying to figure out new things, like Karp is not getting rich off share dilution. Peter Thiel is not getting rich off share dilution right now. Rather, they're building out the foundational infrastructure for a public company to survive for the next 10, 20 years. And share dilution is involved in the beginning in order for that to happen through stock-based compensation. The other thing is they get to write stock-based compensation off in terms of their taxes, right? And in terms of their other financials. So stock-based compensation is one of those things that you can write off as a company, which actually saves a lot more money in the long term. Now, is that the best way to save more money versus some other cases? Probably not. But nonetheless, stock-based compensation is a way for companies to actually work on their balance sheet and optimize their balance sheet while also retaining talent. Do retail investors get hurt by some of the dilution? Yes, but if the value of the overall pie is increasing and getting bigger, and your stake is getting smaller, but your stake is becoming more valuable in terms of the literal dollars because the value of the company is actually going higher, i.e. the stock price because of the dilution, then there's not necessarily the biggest issue that's going on. And that's why I think this argument lacks context and quality, and it's just all based on headlines, because you have to dive deeper into why is one of the companies that's one of the most innovative companies in the world doing something that seems like it's negative. If you got to go deeper into it, you see there's actually a lot of positives within the negatives, and you actually see there's no ill intentions to do something that's negative, but rather there are positive intentions to do something meaningful, even if it is perceived as negative. And usually it's perceived as negative by people that really don't understand what's going on in the context of share dilution and stock-based compensation. So those are my thoughts. People have been asking for a video of this. I've seen some comments on it. Share dilution is not a big deal to me, especially if you understand the reason for why they're diluting their shares. And if you understand that reason, then I don't think it's something to keep you up at night, but rather it's something for you to be happy about. Same thing with the F-class shares that I'm going to do another video about soon, because at the end of the day, you want the company having control, and you want them to make decisions that are strategic with that control. And if they're able to do that, then they're likely going to be able to scale and grow and keep growing over time. Thank you guys for watching. Looking forward to your comments. Do you guys think it's a big deal? Do you think stock-based compensation ultimately is going to hurt the company? Looking forward to reading your comments. My name is Amit. I'll see you in the next one.